She told the judge she built my life and deserved half. $9 million from my company. And the Texas ranch my grandfather staked in 1952. I looked her in the eye and said, "Fine, but give me 60 seconds before you think I've lost my mind." There I was, sitting in a courthouse parking lot, dust on my boots, a manila folder beside me, Ford keys biting my palm. Everyone in that room thought I'd just surrendered, but they didn't see my plan unfolding underneath. You can win on paper and still lose in real life. Most folks learn that lesson too late. But while she counted my excavators and contracts, I was counting my moves, 2 signatures and a trust that flipped her payday into a headache. If you've ever had someone circle everything you built with a red pen, calling it theirs, keep watching. I am about to show how saying yes can be the cleanest way to say no in life and business. I started with a rusted Ford, a borrowed toolbox, and a promise to myself the day my dad died. The man who shows up, no matter what. No fancy offices, just hard work and a heart that won't quit. I took every job no one wanted. Fixing cracked driveways, hauling debris, pouring concrete in August's brutal heat that bent the horizon. One client led to 3, then a dozen. We forged something real, from sweat and determination. The first time I covered payroll for 10 men. I sat in that truck and cried, not from fear, but pride. We were building more than structures. We were building a legacy, one tough day at a time. We grew from steel frames and shopping centers to hospitals and schools. 45 employees, multi-million-dollar contracts. But through it all, our morning ritual stayed sacred. Coffee at 5:30, boots on by 6, a prayer for clear heads and no injuries. Our ranch sits where the Texas sky swallows the road. Panhandle wind hums through barbed wire, dust lifting in ribbons behind the truck. My grandfather staked that land back in '52, a history written in sweat and grit. My father taught me to drive on those rough ranch roads, 2 fingers on the wheel, other hand resting easy like we had all the time in the world. We didn't but that feeling mattered more than minutes and hours. That land isn't just dirt. It's a ledger of every back we ever broke and every prayer we whispered. When the business got rough, ranch carried me. When we grew, it reminded me not to get loud about it. You don't brag to land. You respected. I thought marriage worked the same way. Quiet cares, steady hands. But one day, the wind shifted. The porch light stopped meaning welcome, and the house felt colder. I met Karen in a lecture hall that smelled of dry markers and cold coffee. I was taking night classes in construction management. She chased a communications degree, an ambition that smelled like perfume. We studied at a diner off campus. She edited my papers. I explained load-bearing beams on napkins. I liked that she laughed when I walked in covered in dust, proof that men still build things you can touch. We married young, split rent in a bad apartment, counting nickels just to keep the lights on. On our first anniversary, I framed a lumberyard receipt and hung it above the bed as a joke. She called it romantic. We said, we build a life. Back then, we meant 2 hands pulling the same direction. I never imagined that word would one day sound like a courtroom term. That her pen would stop telling our story and start tallying mine. Our first house had squeaky floors and a faucet that groaned like an old man. But it was ours. Friday nights meant pizza on paper plates, and road maps spread out for a future we dreamed of but couldn't afford yet. Karen used to ask about my crews and clients and laugh when I came home caked in mud. She said, "Don't forget who you are." I promised I wouldn't. Those were good years. We missed dinners, forgave missed Sundays. That's marriage. I believed marriage was quiet care and steady hands. But little things started to shift. She asked about machines and costs, questions that didn't sound casual anymore. The tone changed, and numbers replaced stories. I didn't build walls where none were needed. Good hearts still check the posts. My dad used to say, one night at the shop, I found myself checking posts I didn't want my hands on. Something was wrong beneath the surface, on site at a mole project. She called, Karen, bright and curious, asking how to depreciate excavators. I told her about 40 grand a year per machine. It was a small question, but it felt like a crack in everything I knew. That night, I saw a yellow notepad in the kitchen. Neat handwriting. Dates. Job names. Dollar signs. She said she was learning the business. On paper, it sounded fair. In practice, it felt like a stranger in my pantry. That Friday night, friends came over. Smoke and meat. Texas talk. One said, "Trust but verify." I went home smelling like worry. The porch light didn't feel like welcome anymore. A storm was coming, and I wasn't ready to face it yet. One afternoon, I found Karen at my filing cabinet, phone glowing with contract headers I knew well. I asked what she was doing. She said, "Organizing." But that office was mine, and I felt like a stranger in my own house. At night, we lay back to back in the same bed, strangers renting the same room. I heard the soft hum of the AC and ice dropping. Sounds that used to soothe were now like a house clearing its throat, ready to speak secrets I didn't want to hear. A man learns to read silence like weather. This was the sky going dark at noon. I thought of my father, slow lacing boots at 3 a.m. A new ID stopped guessing and start doing. Trust was a fence, and I was checking every post this time. By noon, I met Robert Hayes, lawyer with ranch hands in his family and oil men clients. He drew boxes on a pad explaining asset freezes, court tools that could freeze my accounts if she filed. He was calm but warned I wasn't alone in this fight. Robert asked what mattered most. I said the ranch. He nodded and said we'd protect it first. The loved land Grandpa staked would be shielded by a family trust, by legal walls made of paper but built to last like old fence posts. Robert explained Texas law. What you build during marriage is community property. That means the business, machines, accounts, all on the table unless clearly separate. It could get complicated. I pictured excavators lined like cattle at auction, tagged with price. We set the table with smart structure, separating the valuable assets, heavy iron and property, daily operations. Walker Construction ran jobs and payroll. Walker Holdings owned the big stuff. Paperwork stacked up. Ink faded. But the plan was clear. Win before the game. The family trust held the land. Blood relatives only could inherit. The ranch couldn't be seized in divorce. I'd be trustee, steward of the land, protector of the legacy Grandpa built with hands worn by rope and hard Texas sun. I signed the papers, feeling something settle deep inside. Not victory, alignment, the kind of straight that survives storms. Not armor, but a foundation. Paper felt heavier than concrete that day. Proof that battles are sometimes won in silence. I sat in the truck with the folder on the seat, keys biting my palm. The fight would be quiet from here on. No shocks, no surprises. I'd agree to every last demand on paper. But I knew the real battle was just beginning. Karen started taking calls in hushed hallways, lunches with friends I never met. Names dropped like secrets. I told myself not to turn jealous, but the routine felt too thin, like boots with a sole worn through by worry. One afternoon, I found a receipt from a hotel she'd never liked, tucked near the freeway. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. At dinner, her smile felt distant. My gut twisted, but I left the words unsaid. Trust phrased quietly, but it's loud inside. Next morning, I asked, "Who's Sandra?" She didn't look up. Book club. That lunch wasn't tea. Her eyes sharpened. Why interrogate me? The room shrank like a trap. I didn't want fights, but when your foundation cracks, silence isn't peace. Said she was different. The questions, the photos in my office. She called me paranoid. That word hit like a slap. But paranoia can be a tool if you've built something worth protecting. I had a folder, and I wasn't done yet. Moments came when you see the person across the table is no longer on your side. I grabbed my jacket, rinsed my cup, and chose distance over damage. Sometimes walking away is the first step to fighting back stronger. At the weekly meeting, Eric leaned back and asked, "How's cash flow next quarter?" Money talk was usually mine alone. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I took notes. The air shifted. Maybe ghosts, Or maybe clarity finally cutting through the fog. I doubled back to the office that night, found Derek's truck still there. Through the door, I heard plans to underbid me using client lists and contracts. My trust cut deep. I started locking down passwords, access logs, and watched my back like never before. Derek said, "Ethan trusts people. Always has. That's his weakness. Trust built more for me than it broke. But even I knew a rope can only stretch so far before it snaps." I remembered the man he used to be. Where did he vanish to? Between exit signs and cattle guards. I made a quiet promise. If trust is my weakness, clarity will be my strength. No more guessing. No more hoping. Time to see the picture in hard, unflinching light. I parked, hands shaking, watching porch light spill on the steps. It wasn't fear, it was grief. The door to my own house felt like someone else's. I counted hits, business carved by a smile. Betrayal paired with loss. I wasn't safe anymore. Cold coffee, payroll, rubber band tight with tension. I loved certainty. You pour concrete. It said, but people aren't like that. I rubbed my hands to steady them. For the first time in years, I came home and didn't feel safe. She asked about a friend's kitchen backsplash with casual ease. Laughed at sitcom jokes I couldn't hear. It all sounded normal, but I felt like a guest in my own home, watching someone else live my life while I stood still. I wanted to ask, "Who are you calling? What are you photographing?" But I stayed quiet. She said, "You quiet." I said, "Long day." The conversation was already gone. Swallowed by growing distance, we refused to name. I called Dana Collins. Private eye. Calm. Unhurried. Knowing fraud like ranchers know weather. She said, "You relate reacting." Which is normal. 3 weeks to uncover everything. 3 weeks where a lot can break. And I did the only thing I knew. Dana warned me. "Don't change your rhythm. If you do, they change theirs. Like concrete curing. You can rush it without ruining everything." I kept the routine. 5:30 coffee. Boots. Job site by 7. Normal became armor I wore every day. At home, I kissed Karen on the head and asked about her day. Her smile was tight, hiding a present neither of us wanted to unwrap. Nights creaked like old floors, and I counted nails in my head to drown out second guessing. Lunch with Sandra that lasted too long. A dress I never saw before. A phone face down. Hiding secrets. I don't snoop. The room tells you what you don't want to see. The story was getting louder than my denial. Dana texted progress reports. No details. I kept my hands off the fuse and reminded myself. Trust the process you chose. Like walking on sagging floorboards, you step light. Straight. Cautious. One question pounding every night. How much of this is still ours? One Wednesday, Dana called. "Can you come in this afternoon? You want tea like what I found?" Nerves nodded, but I prepared to face the hardest part, the truth waiting like a shadow behind every door I opened. Dana didn't waste time. Karen had been planning divorce for over a year. Attorneys, investigators, quiet meetings. Worse, she'd been in a relationship with Derek. My world shattered with just a look at her name beside his. Dates, receipts, photos, professional, not cruel. I stared at the people in those pictures, familiar faces, but total strangers now. The room shrank to the width of that folder. The air thinner than breath held too long. Dana showed charts with arrows pointing from my assets to their new company launch. Karen brought the settlement. Derek brought inside knowledge. They weaponized everything, stealing my playbook while I built from sweat. I pictured my crewmen working hard before the sun rose, now under management of 2 strangers, never bled for the work. It was like watching someone kick a dog off a porch. Reputation, earned inch by inch, shredded in moments. The climax came quiet. Not a scream, but a crack. They weren't just leaving. They were stepping into my boots while I still wore them, thinking they had the feet to fill them. Something in me broke that day. Silent but firm, when the noise in my head wouldn't quiet. I fled north toward the Panhandle, where sky and grass repeat like hymn tones. The horizon humbled me, gave space for fractured thoughts to stand straight again. The cabin was humble. Creaking logs, cool stone even in August heat. It wasn't too much, but it was honest. Sitting on its porch steps, let the boards brand my skin home. Quiet therapy for a weary mind and heart. Granda didn't he homestead with hashtags. He staked life with wire and sweat the stubbornness the panhandle respects. Family lore says he marked the first 40 acres with a pocket knife and a prayer, borrowing horses and more hope than sense. He built that cabin from trees no one thought would stand strong against Texas wind. As a kid, I sat on his lap, imagining the knots in the logs as maps to places we'd go. He said, "Land doesn't owe you. You owe land your best." I held that lesson close. Paper didn't feel like armor until you need it. Now I was ready. The quiet fight was about to begin. And for the first time, I wasn't surprised, I was prepared. The fight wasn't loud or dramatic. It was solitude filled with hard questions. Who do you trust when trust is the crime scene? I was alone at the crossroads, ready to build a new kind of foundation, one that wouldn't crack beneath me. Betrayal weighs heavy, heavier than steel beams or concrete slabs. It carves itself into your bones like a name etched deep into wood. I carried the weight, every step building tension, tighter than any bolt I'd ever tightened. Words that once built walls to shelter us now divided. Names once sacred whispered behind closed doors. The life I built with hands dirtied by honest work was being measured, bartered, and sliced apart in quiet rooms. Sometimes you have to break to rebuild stronger. The pain is the hammer, the loss is the foundation. Though betrayal strained every beam, I was determined to craft a home that would last, no matter what storms came next. I checked every post and every corner, not just on the ranch, but in life. Some posts leaned, some cracked, but all needed attention. The cost was high, but I wasn't about to let this storm knock us down completely. Legacy isn't about what you hold it what survives your hardest fights. Grandpa's land, my father's work, all stitched into this life. The fight was mine to finish, but the story, the land, would go on long after I was gone. The house might have cracked, the truss splintered, but I was still here to build. Not just structures, but a new beginning. A foundation built on clarity, hard lessons, and a promise to never take what I built for granted again. Fight didn't end with fireworks or shouting matches. It ended in quiet acceptance and unshakable resolve. The story continues not in losses counted, but in the sweat and pride of every nail hammered right. I kept faith in the work I do, in the men who stand by me, and in the future. No matter the storms, no matter the losses, a man who builds with heart always finds a way to stand tall again. Trust is a tool to build with, but it must be handled carefully. I learned to build walls strong enough to protect, yet open enough to grow. The stakes were high, the price even higher, but the lesson was clear. Sometimes the cleanest way to say no is to say yes first. I played their game by the rules, but on my terms. A quiet war fought with papers and trusts, where winning means standing your ground without raising your voice. Every timber and steel beam, every contract and handshake built this legacy. It was more than business, it was family, history, sweat, and prayers, worth fighting for, worth protecting until the last nail was driven home. Falling only taught me how to build stronger. Betrayal doesn't define you, resilience does. I learned to guard, to trust cautiously, and to build on soil tested by storms, because real strength isn't visible until it has tested. I started as the man who showed up, and that man doesn't quit. Fight was long and quiet, but one thing was clear. Building something real means standing firm even when the wind blows cold, and the stakes are higher than ever. This story isn't just about loss or betrayal. It's about resilience, about fighting without fire, and building even when foundations shake. The lessons stay when the dust settles, and they worth sharing. If someone circled what you built and called it theirs, what would you do? Fight loud, walk away, or build a quiet fortress no one ever saw coming? The answer says more about you than you think. The loudest fights make the news, but the quiet ones carve deeper scars. Navigating betrayal and loss with calm strength, its own kind of victory. It the silent battle every man building a legacy ought to understand. Building something real means risk. Sometimes you get burned, sometimes shattered, but real builders know resilience isn't about never falling, but always getting back up, stronger, smarter, and more ready than before. Every man owns his story, the good and bad, the triumphs and betrayals. Owning it means accepting the cracks as much as the polish. Knowing every part builds the man you become standing tall at the end. Legacies are more than property lines or dollar signs. They are the stories woven into every fence post, every board nailed with care. Protecting legacy means protecting the soul of what we build, not just the assets on paper. The quiet fight goes on inside. After courts close and crowds go home, it's about holding onto who you are when everything else shifts. That's the true measure of building something that lasts beyond storms and shadows. Trust isn't a given. It's earned, rebuilt, and fiercely guarded. Sometimes you build walls not to keep others out. Keep yourself steady enough to stand through the storm. Steady hands build more than structures. They build resilience, integrity, and legacies that ripple through generations. When storms come, steady hands hold fast, they don't tremble. They build forward. Pain carves deep, but it shapes strength. Every cut, every betrayal, is a scar that marks survival. I learned that the hardest way, but the scars that prove the fight was worth it. At the end of the day, it's about holding onto what truly matters. Family, honor, the land you call home. Paper can protect property, but it can protect the soul. Only we can do that through what we build and stand for. The real build happens beyond the courtroom with every sunrise, every steel beam, every hand extended in trust once more. That's where life keeps going, where broken things find new shape, and where hope stands strong. So what will you build? A fortress of silence or a home of strength? The fight might get quiet, but the heart behind it beats loud. In every challenge, there lies a chance to build better and to stand taller. A man's work is never done. You break, you build, you rebuild. Story isn't the end, it's the blueprint for what comes next. Stand strong, build right, and don't let the storm define you. That's all any of us can do. The court battle began quietly, but each page of legal papers felt like a hammer driving nails into my hope. She claimed half of everything: the business, the land, the future. I was standing on shaky ground, but ready to fight. It was more than numbers, it was invisible lines drawn across decades of sweat and dreams. Lawyers talking about just and right, but justice felt distant. This was my life being auctioned in a silent courtroom battle. The ranch wasn't just property. It was family, history, and hope laid out beneath endless Texas skies. Protecting it meant protecting a legacy, something even law and contracts only partially understood. Trust, once the bedrock, became a weapon wielded quietly. Contracts and accounts twisted like barbed wire, each clause a trap. I had to build legal walls as strong as the fences on that dirt, or lose everything I'd ever built. She wasn't alone. Derek, once a brother in arms, was there behind the scenes, passing my secrets to rival hands. The kind of betrayal cuts deeper than any lawsuit. It's the kind you carry in your gut when the world goes quiet. Dana laid out the blueprint for their plan quiet. Patient, ruthless, every contract, every client list doubled as a weapon to undercut me. The fight was no longer just for assets, but for identity, honor, and survival. Still, I wasn't done. Standing tall in shadowed rooms, I gathered my strength. This fight might be quiet, but it was fierce. Every nail hammered had a story, and every story deserved a warrior-esque defense. The Panhandle wind reminded me why this fight mattered. The ranch wasn't just land, it was sanctuary, a testament to resilience, a place where storms pass but roots hold steady. ID protected at all costs. It held more than dirt. It held family history engraved deep in soil and stone. Grandpa's hands, Dad's lessons, and my sweat all etched into the land's silent story. This was worth fighting for beyond anything else. Before the storm hits, there's a calm that feels heavy and sharp. Standing on that porch, I felt it, a quiet resolve and the weight of what was coming. But I wasn't walking away. I was stepping in, ready to protect what was mine. In this fight, every move counts. Every signature, every trust, every quiet decision shapes the outcome. The stakes were higher than lawyers, contracts, or money. This was about identity, legacy, and who I was when the dust settled. Sometimes saying yes is the smartest no. I agreed to terms on paper, but I controlled the game behind the scenes. Structure and strategy became my tool, silent weapons stronger than any shout in a courtroom. I stood firm, silent, steady while others made noise. Because building real strength isn't about loud words. It's about calm hands, clear eyes, and a plan that outlasts the chaos and noise of the moment. At the end of the day, home is what you protect. Not just the roof over your head, but the stories, sweat, and heart behind it. That fight, quiet as it was mine, shaped who I'd be from now on. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. It has quiet strength, steady work, and honest days. After the storm, the ground is softer, and the wells stronger. This is the blueprint I follow to build, not just to endure, but to thrive. That manila folder I gripped, once a simple thing, felt heavier than concrete. It held evidence, pain, and resolve. Every page told part of the story I lived. Every step forward was a decision to fight smarter, not harder. Battles don't always roar. Some whisper through signed pages and quiet meetings. But the impact, it lands hard, like a storm cracking the old fence. I knew every quiet battle left scars, seen only by those who fought them. Legacy is strength you don't see until it is tested. Grandpa's land, Dad's wisdom, it lives in me, in how I stand. This fight was about more than dollars. It was about protecting the story inked in sweat, tears, and stubborn love. From that rusted Ford to running multi-million contracts, every step built a legacy. But legacy isn't just money or machines. It's the work, trust, and the choices made when no one is watching. The dust on my boots carries stories, the hard lessons life etches while you build. Sometimes those lessons sting. Sometimes they save you. Remembering them keeps a man steady when nothing else seems certain. This fight was quiet, but real. It wasn't about yelling or breaking down walls. It was about building new ones. Walls of paper and trust could protect what mattered most against unseen storms. Life gets measured in pages, photos, and signed deals, but protecting it means more than numbers. It means understanding the value of what's behind those pages, the blood, sweat, and the quiet prayers that built it all. Paper might seem soft, but in the right hands, it's armor. Legal structures, trust, and strategies became my quiet weapons. The fight was invisible, but it mattered enough to build a fortress around what I loved. Sometimes the loudest cheers come after the quietest battles. Victory doesn't always roar. Sometimes it arrives as peace, solid ground, and the knowledge you stood firm when others would be fallen. A man does what he must not because it's easy, but because it's right. This story is one of grit, faith, and quiet strength. I wasn't done building. Far from it. This was just the beginning of a new chapter. Every step forward was a step of faith that hard work means something. That legacy isn't lost by storms. That a man can still build a life worth fighting for. No matter how quiet the fight gets. Stories live beneath every surface, fences, dirt, and old wood. Some shine bright, others hide in shadows. It takes grit to find the truth under the dust. But that's where real strength is born. Away from spotlight and noise. I built to stand the storms, not just the rain, but the ones life throws at a man when he least expects it. This is the blueprint of resilience, quiet, steady, and forever grounded in the soil of home. Legacy isn't something you grab at, something you hold steady with both hands. My family, land, and business all fragile and strong at once. I am here to keep that balance no matter what breaks around me. Betrayal comes at a price. It shakes foundations and fractures trust. But betrayal also teaches. It shows where to build stronger and how to stand when everything else falls apart, and silence becomes your loudest weapon. Quiet battles need loud hearts brave enough to face loss, clear enough to see through lies, and strong enough to turn broken pieces into new foundations. That's how real men fight the hardest wars. Ranch hands know resilience in their bones. Weathering wind, storms, and time itself, the land teaches patience, strength, and humility. That's what built me, and that's what no court or contract can ever take away. After all that's broken, the hardest part is relearning to trust myself. My hands, my heart, my judgment. But I know the soil beneath me runs deep, and that truth is where I stand firm. Even in shifting sands, the broken pieces aren't the end. They re-raw materials for something stronger. I am building beyond what was lost higher, steadier, and with lessons carved deep in wood and steel. This is how stories restart. I am the man who rebuilds not just walls and roads, but trust, legacy, quiet strength. The fight will carry on, but I stand stronger for it. This isn't just my story. It is a blueprint for anyone who has ever had to start again. Every nail driven carries purpose. Every beam lifted holds a promise. This is what building truly means, not just creating structures, but crafting a future that honors the past and defies the storms ahead. A promise rooted deep in Texas soil, a commitment not just to property, but to family, history, and honors. It is a vow to stand tall, hold steady, and build a life that whether lasts and time respects. Clarity cuts through storms clearer than anger or fear. I see now who stands with me and who walks away. With clear eyes, I build forward, no shadows, no doubts, just a man and his land, fighting for what remains sacred. No more guessing games or second-guessing my own hands. Solid foundation comes from seeing every crack, every weak post, and fixing them before the storm breaks. This is how a man rebuilds trust in a broken world. The quiet fight hits loud in the long run. It teaches patience, grit, and the power of steady hands when everything else shakes. Story isn't unique, it is every builder's legacy who refuses to quit. Each step forward, each decision made with care, adds strength. These aren't just steps, they re the foundation for a future, unshaken by betrayal or loss. I am here to build that future, piece by piece, nail by nail. Legacy is more than name, and land it has resilience carved into every dawn and dusk. That's the echo of every hand that has ever built, fixed, and stood tall through storms. This is the story I carry, and the one I'll leave behind. Though loss shook me, I am a builder. Beyond the rubble and betrayal, I create new beginnings. Every beam lifted holds hope. Every foundation laid is a statement. I am still standing, still building, and still believing. People see boots, mud, and grit. Behind them stands a man forged by hardship, learning that the strongest things aren't always seen, they refelt deep inside. Built quietly with love and sweat. Winning doesn't mean shouting louder. It means planning smarter. I learned to say yes when it means no, to build legal walls as strong as concrete, and to fight quietly with everything I had. My father's quiet wisdom whispered in the fences and fields. At every post, he said, that lesson carried me through storms darker than any sky. Wisdom isn't always loud. Sometimes it has a steady hand guiding you home. Broken things can be rebuilt, trust included. It takes time, patience, and the courage to stand tall even when the ground feels uneven. Every day, I build stronger on lessons learned the hard way. Legacy goes beyond money, contracts, or land titles. It is in the lessons passed, the sweat earned, and the faith held when everything else wavers. That is the legacy I fight to protect, and the one I'll leave behind. The fight never truly ends, it evolves. From courts to quiet moments, from betrayal to rebuilding. Every builder knows this, but every fight makes the foundation stronger. Every battle shapes the man beneath the boots. Legacy lives in every sunrise and every nail hammered right. It is in the quiet strength of steady hands. The faith that building means more than structures, it is about lives, love, and the land we stand on. Promise to keep building not just walls, but trust, not just foundations, but futures. The fight may be quiet, but it has fierce, and as long as the sun rises over that land, I'll be here, standing, steady, and unyielding. You don't give up on home, even when the ground shakes under your feet. Because home isn't just where you live. It's what you willing to fight for. Day after day, nail after nail, with hands steady and heart strong. Every builder's story matters. The quiet hurts, the costly lessons, and the strength to rise again. This is the story of resilience that lives in mud-caked boots and worn hands across Texas and beyond. Do you protect what's yours when the battle is silent and trust is thin? Sometimes you fight with noise, sometimes with quiet wisdom. The answer lies in the foundation you're willing to build beneath it all. It takes strength to fall and courage to stand again. I carry that strength in everything I build, from the ground beneath my boots to the legacy I'll leave. This is my story. What's yours? In the end, the question isn't what you build, but why? What will your legacy be? The land and walls may age, but the story you choose to live and tell, that's what lasts forever.